All right, welcome back, everybody. Today I thought I'd go over buffs and debuffs in ElvUI. Now, when we're talking about buffs and debuffs, we're only talking about your buffs and debuffs. We're not talking about other players. We're not talking about bosses or anything that you're attacking. We're only talking about yours. Those are the ones that show up right up here on my UI. Now, before we get into how we actually configure the buffs and debuffs, let's take a look at how they're positioned. So if we go into ElvUI, we go to toggle. This is where I've positioned them. Now, notice there's a space here. I could extend this one, the buffs down, or I could extend the debuffs up if I wanted, but that's in the configuration, not in the anchors. So let's take a look at the buffs and debuffs. So as you can see, the first thing you have to do is enable the buffs and debuffs. Once you enable them, that allows ElvUI to see what's up there. And then we also want to disable the Blizzard buffs and debuffs. That way ElvUI can format them the way that you want them formatted. So the first thing is the Generals tab. You have Generals, buffs, and debuffs. And we'll go into each one of those tabs separately. But the first one is the general one, and this is your fade threshold. So at what point are they going to start fading? And at the where I want to do that is here. I want to set it at whatever level I want. So I want it to set at 5, which I believe is the default. So at 5, you're going to start to see it flashing. Okay. If I was to cast a spell on myself, as you can see, I've got Renewing Mist on me for another 19 seconds. And at 5 seconds, that's going to start fading, and you're also going to see the text color change. So if we wait for that, you'll see that it's going to, there's an enveloping mist, and there you go. It's fading. This one's fading as well. And this one, when it gets down to 5, which is life cycle, it will also start to fade. So there you go. All right. So that's how you change the fade. The font, just like everything else, you set your font here. And if you do it in media, it should change it here, but sometimes it doesn't. So what I do is I make sure that it's set for the correct font that I want, the correct size that I want. So Expressway is the one that I'm using across all of my UI, so I'm staying with Expressway. And I also outline the font. By doing that, you can see it a little bit better. You can do a thicker outline. It'll give a blacker color around the edges. Your time offset is the offset of the time that you see here. So that's offset from center. So that's 2 for there and 14 offset Y. So this is your XY coordinates, your left, right, up, down. And you can adjust these how you see fit. So I'm going to copy this so I don't lose it. So if I was to change the offset, you see where it's set. This is your up and down offset. And that was 14. So we're going to set that back at 14. And if you set your Y offset, you can actually move it further over into the corners if you have your text smaller or whatever. And that's how you do that. So I had that set at 2, which is where I liked it. So it's set right in the center and down on the bottom. And that's how you adjust the time on the buffs and debuffs. And the count is how many stacks of that. Let's see. I don't know if I have anything that would give me a stack. There we go. You saw 2 stacks. The 2 stacks on Thunder Focus D was up in the corner. So what I've done is I have set my offset to 17 on my count, and then my offset, my X offset is 3. So that puts it up in the top right corner. And that's exactly where I want it to be. and you can adjust this how you want to meet your needs. Okay, so there is mask support. Built-in mask, if you didn't know, is a um, another add-on which you can get from Curse, and it will shape your buffs and debuffs, your action buttons, and it'll put different effects on it. And they have that support for ElvUI built in. So once you download that, you come in here, you set it, you set your put your settings into mask, and there you go. It'll enable it. All right, so that's your general settings for buffs and debuffs. Let's go into the buff zone. And again, you can set your offsets again here. You can have your wrap, how many you want to wrap. So my maximum wrap for my buffs is 2. Let's say I want to set it to 3. And if I toggle, you see it's much bigger now. So now I'll have 3 rows down and 2 rows, I think it's 2 rows of debuffs, which will allow you to see more buffs if that's the case, and you could potentially in the raid. All right, so this is button size. Now I usually run mine about 32. If I wanted to, I could go a little bit larger or even smaller. And then remember that you can move these to any position that you want. So we set those back to 32, and we decide how we want it to grow. So if I was to pick this up, pick my buffs and debuffs up and say move them over to the left side of my monitor, then maybe I want them to go right then down. So they'll come off of the monitor side and grow out to the right. And then the next row will come and do the same thing. So that's what you can do with that. You can tell it how many you want it to wrap. So I have 12. So I'll have 12 buffs, and then it'll wrap and do 12 more and wrap and do 12 more. And that's all you do with that. So again, maximum wrap is 3. So I'll have 3 3 rows of 12. And then horizontal spacing will give me 2 pixels between this row and this row. And then vertical spacing is 16. Correction. It's 2 pixels between icons here, and then vertical is down, up and down. So it'll be 16 pixels, which will give you enough room if you want text underneath. Sort method is by time. So the shorter ones, as you saw, are over here. And as I add ones, the shorter one is here. And then if there is no time, then it'll come over on the left-hand side. Okay, and then it's going to sort descending, and then it's going to put mine first. So I know exactly where to look if I see that, okay, these are my buffs, and then everybody else's will go after that. All right, so that's the buffs. Now the debuffs are exactly the same. You set them up the exact same way. And you put, the only difference I have is I have max wrap is 1. So I'll only have 1 row of debuffs. So that's the difference between that. Now, if I was to change buffs back to 2 and debuffs to 2, those would be exactly the same. But there is a potential I'll have more buffs than I will debuffs in a raid. So I leave it at that. And it's that simple. Again, the one thing that you have to remember is this is talking about your buffs and debuffs. When we're talking about your target or a boss, those are going to come up, and I'll show you those when we get to unit frames. So if we're talking about boss, as you can see, there are buffs and debuffs here. we'll get into that a little bit more later, but that's how you do the buffs and debuffs. Now, one thing that I realized from the last one is I said, okay, I'm going to set up the mounts on a hidden bar. As you can see down here, I've cleaned this up a little bit. And I've actually started to use 9 and 10 on most of my characters. So this is bar 9, and here are all of my mounts. And these are some of the hearthstones that I really don't use very frequently. So I figured I'd put them over there. Um, and you can move them around as you wish. So these are all of my mounts that I'm currently using. And then over here, I put all of my, um, these are all of my macros at top, and then these are all of my professions down here. And that's all there is to that. And we can, like I said, we'll go into buffs and debuffs a little bit later on for your boss and your targets. But that's all I have for you for today. I hope you enjoyed this. Thumbs up, likes. If you do, please subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.